His point behind it was never settle for second best, whether you're second string, don't settle for that, whether it's in your job later in life, whether it's your wife or your family or anything you do, just don't settle for second best. And that's just kind of something that's always stuck in my head.
Thanks for listening today. My name is Kagan with BriteBee, and today on The Person Behind the Professional, we are glad to have on Brady Hill with Farmers Insurance in Rockwall, Texas. Brady is a farmers insurance agency, and he has been around for over 10 years. And honestly, he's right out of college, so graduating from Texas Tech. And he says really he wouldn't do anything else except for being a professional athlete. Brady, welcome on to the High Five.
Thanks, Keegan.
So Brady, let's just start in, and you started in insurance right out of college. So
I did. Yeah. And I'll definitely add that being a professional athlete is definitely not in my future or even possibility in my past. But although would have been a fun thing if I would have had been good enough. But yeah, I did. I started right out of college, right after I graduated from Texas Tech. It was about 6 months to a year after I graduated, but it was my first full career, I guess you would say, out of school.
So what made you go into the insurance world? I mean, that's not usually what people go into right after college.
Well, I came out of school back in right at the end of '06. So at that point, the job market was fantastic, kind of where we're getting back to now, but even better back at that time. I was actually going on interviews left and right and really felt like I kind of had my choice and pick of jobs. Like I said, it was much different than what we've seen really over the past 4 or 5 years when it comes to jobs. And so I was really blessed with lots of interviews, lots of offers, and just wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do. I was really interested in marketing, specifically sports marketing, but I figured out real quick that it was a very low entry level to get started in that, and just didn't know that that's necessarily where I wanted to where I wanted to start my career. Was actually offered a position at a large commercial insurance firm in Dallas, and when I did that, I went to a good family friend of mine, a gentleman named Joe Wimpy, who's one of the top agents in all of Farmers, although I didn't know that at the time. Just said, "Hey, man, I got offered this position. I know nothing about insurance. Just wanted to get your opinion." We talked about it for a while. He told me it was, a great opportunity. He said, "But if you're going to look at doing that, why don't you talk to farmers?" And basically kind of introduced me to a recruiter and kind of said, "If you're going to look at doing that, why don't you start your own agency?" The next question I had for him is, "Well, are you hiring?" And that's when I got probably the best advice of my life up to that point. And he said, "Yeah, I'm always hiring." He said, "But I know you well enough that you don't want to come work for me. You'll do it for 2 years and realize you can do this on your own. And at that point, I'll have all those clients and you'll be starting over from scratch. So you might as well just dive head first and get your bumps and bruises." So
that's a pretty big thing for someone to say. I mean, you trusted him, I know, and respect him even more so. I mean, because a lot of people would just jump on and say, "Yeah, Brady's got the potential to help me grow my business, and I'll suck him dry as long as I can."
Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a huge blessing, and him and I are still very good friends, and I have thanked him multiple times for that advice for sure.
That's so great. Well, you mentioned you have a quote that we saw, and you said it's never settle for second best. And what does that mean to your agency?
Well, that was actually a quote from my high school football coach, who oddly enough is actually a client of mine now, and he still terrifies me when I talk to him on the phone. I just start cringing. And
yes, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Coach Elam was my high school coach here in Rockwall, and that's one thing that he had said to us in a practice, and it's probably, I'm sure, something he's used with all of his athletes over the years, but it's just something that had always stuck in my head. And when he gave it at the speech at that point, his point behind it was never settle for second best, whether you're second string, don't settle for that, whether it's in your job later in life, whether it's your wife or your family or anything you do, just don't settle for second best. And that's just kind of something that's always stuck in my head and just kind of always reminded me. And I'm not a big person that likes the the big motivational posters and things
Sure.
like that. I don't hang those things up in my wall on the walls, but that's that particular quote's definitely something that stuck with me through the years.
How do you help your team understand that as well? I know it's one thing for you to understand it, but sometimes as a business owner, sometimes you feel like you're alone in that belief, right? How do you help your team understand that as well?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's definitely something that's tough to get staff to buy in on what you're doing. You know, I think that there's a few different things that we do very well when it comes to staffing and keeping staff motivated, keeping them on track. You know, I think that one of the things they see is how I conduct myself and how we conduct business. You know, I'm a very strong believer in Christ. We pray before every single team meeting. You know, I tell people that up front. I said, you know, just let them know if it's something that they're not comfortable with, and you know, that may not be the best fit for them. But we do that before every team meeting. You know, my staff knows exactly where we stand. You know, we will gladly, or not gladly, but we are willing to lose clients over things if over not being honest or not being upfront. And then I think that just another thing is I think that trickles into how I treat them, how they treat clients. And a big thing that I tell them all the time is, you know, as long as they're being honest and they have the right intentions, I will always go to bat for them. You know, whether it's with a client, with an insurance company or anything like that, I always have their back as long as they're doing the right things with the right intentions. And so I think that type of culture kind of resonates and helps them to truly buy into what we're doing. You know, we try and have a pretty big team atmosphere, even though in a way, you know, some of my staff partially competes against each other for sales. I mean, you know, there's you know, there's definitely clients out there and people that they both know that, you know, and referral sources that we have that multiple staff members know. And so in a way they do compete on occasion, but they also know when it comes down to it, you know, this is a team. And I tell them all the time, I tell every person I hire, I said, my goal is for you to retire from this agency, and I will do everything in my power to get to that point. And I tell them, you know, all the time that they're family. You know, when you become part of this team, they're part of our family. So again, I just really think it goes down to the smaller things that you do and the things that you say and your actions that really helps your staff just really buy in on what you're doing.
I want to jump back to, you know, you said that you pray before your meetings, and one of the things BriteBee team does is we call them our family meetings, because we do believe we're a family, and you know, we go through so many struggles of being a startup. You know, it continues to grow us closer together. But we believe in the power of prayer. And what do you guys pray about? I mean, most people may think, you know, an insurance agency, like, what are they praying about? Are they praying about the policy or
no, not typically. We typically, it's usually, I'm usually the one who leads, and it's not a long thing. It's not, you know, we don't spend, you know, 20, 30 minutes. It's just a couple minutes. And if I do know of something that's going on in any of their lives that's obviously not confidential, you know, we put that in there. You know, I always make sure to pray for, you know, I always pray for the staff, and I pray for them to be successful in business, but more importantly for their families and their faith. And I try and make it as much about them and their lives and things that I do know going about, but also too, just for protection, and that, you know, we make the best decisions possible for what we're trying to do.
Man, to seek after wisdom daily is extremely important. So, and I feel like even just in this industry, you know, we have a lot of pressure on us, right, to make sales and to do well and have success. But man, there's that pressure of, I believe, always doing what's right or doing what's wrong. And so to have that wisdom is amazing. So how would you say you balance this life, this insurance life, this business owner life with family, and how do you handle all of that?
As you and I've, or as you've seen before, my wife's a travel agent. So one of our true passions in life is travel. And that's really how she got into being a travel agent, was because we do love traveling so much. But I do think it's definitely tough. One of the things that was a big blessing for me is I started my agency prior to being married and obviously prior to having kids. And so I had about 4 years, 3.5 years that I had my agency before I was married. So I was able to kind of start a base of things and kind of get things going in the beginning. And then even in our first couple of years of marriage before we had kids, I still had the flexibility to work a little bit more and maybe spend a little bit more time on weekends and things like that, which has helped me build something up and hire amazing staff to now get to the point where I don't have to be up here till 10 o'clock, multiple nights a week. And I don't have to work, every Saturday and Sunday. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't occasions where I do have to be up here later or have to take care of something on the weekend. But one thing I explain to my staff is I'm not a big person that takes just random time off during the week.
Yeah.
So I typically tell my staff I'm pretty much always one of three places when it comes to a work day. I'm either going to be in the office, I'm going to be out marketing, or I'm going to be on vacation. And there's really not a third option. I'm not someone who goes and plays golf for fun. I do take some of our referral sources occasionally. But even at that, golf takes up so much time. It's rare that I do that. It's more lunches and things like that. So it's not it's just really rare for me to take just a, midday time off to do things outside of when we do take vacations. But for us, it's also been having a fantastic staff that we do have a little bit more flexibility than I did, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even really a year ago. So
sure. So you got to tell us, what has been the best trip you've gone on and why?
Been very blessed. Farmers has sent me a lot of places, so that's been fantastic. And there's been some really cool things that we've gotten to do through trips that we've won through Farmers. But I will say probably the best trip I've ever taken was probably actually most recently in June. My wife and I, there were a lot of moving parts and making sure that, the insurance agency was taken care of as well as her travel agency. We actually took off about 3.5 weeks and went to Europe. And so we traveled pretty much all over Central and parts of Eastern Europe. And we're able to, like I said, take about a little over 3 weeks off and do that. Now, we had to do some work.
Oh, sure.
Time, and we did have the kids, which are very young, so that definitely adds to the work. But it was just a really amazing trip. I go back to staff. Like, if it wasn't for the staff I had, there's no way I could have done this. And so I definitely think that being able to really just leave for an extended period of time, and I don't want to say not worry about things, but not worry to the point that I was going to come back to, no sales or anything like that. In fact, In fact, the month that we were actually gone, we had, I believe, in new business, our best month we'd had all year. So,
wow,
it was a fantastic trip, and things went extremely smooth while I was gone as well.
That's great. And I think sometimes having those extended periods, it's refreshing to you. I know coming back is sometimes difficult, but you say your staff is phenomenal, so that definitely helps. But it's refreshing to you, but it also gives you perspective of how great your team is.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
So you can give a plug on your wife if you would like to. I would really like to know where she's a travel agent at.
Well, she actually owns her own agency. It's her name's Savannah, and her agency is the Savvy Travel Agency. She has had her agency 2 years, and I'm going to brag on her a little bit. She for their big major conference, as like travel agent conference, she was actually asked to speak on a panel because of her production only being 2 years in. So we're going to be at a travel agent conference in September on a cruise ship, how cool is that to have a conference on a cruise ship?
Absolutely.
So we'll be at that, and she's been asked to speak on a panel with some people that do some pretty major amounts in the travel industry. So,
what's interesting, and I'm just ignorant. Most likely I'm just ignorant, but I thought the travel agent wasn't really a big thing anymore. But I found out over these last couple of weeks Like people are using travel agents to travel. And we actually are using one for something, and I never thought I would even talk to a travel agent. Why do you think that is?
It's a couple things. I mean, really, what people don't realize is the Expedias, Travelocities, and those things. All they are is an online travel agency. So I think that there are still people that have always used travel agents, and those continue. But I do think there is a little bit of people coming back, at least in the travel industry, maybe not in all industries, but coming back to wanting a little bit of help, in-person help, or at least phone and email. And I think the big thing is for her, she's very rarely competing against other travel agents. She's just really competing on educating people on why it makes more sense to use her than the internet.
Yeah.
And really it comes down to when something goes wrong, just like in our insurance and our industry and insurance, is would you rather have an 800 number to call, or would you rather have a person to call? And that's really what happens. And I think that's where she's the biggest benefit, is when something does go wrong, they have her to get in touch with, as opposed to an 800 number. And it kind of goes the same along the same routes as what we have in insurance. There's some great companies out there that don't employ agents, and that business model definitely works. I think that's proven. But there are many times that I believe that when things do happen and go wrong, a client would rather have a person or an agency that they've dealt with before to call and ask questions, as opposed to an 800 number and just ended up with whoever they end up with.
Yeah, definitely. And just in my experience over these last weeks of hearing a travel agent's voice and hearing them express what it's going to be like and what you need to be careful of, and just the inflection in their voice makes a huge difference. It's so different than, going, just seeing a nice picture and you're like, yeah, that's a nice picture, but is that really what it's going to look like? And it's really cheap. Why is it so cheap?
Yeah, there's definitely some ins and outs on things. And, a lot of what a travel agent does, people can do on their own, but they don't have the education to know what to look for, what to ask, where to research, what to find. And then there are some resources that she has available to her as a travel agent that just the normal public doesn't have. So, again, just like in insurance and any other industry, people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it goes right back to the insurance agent as well. A lot of people could go do it themselves if they want, but the deal is, first off, they're not going to take enough time to do it because they don't have time. And then also it's something about having that person there that you can trust, saying, hey, Brady Hill has my back, and I can continue on with my life and know that if I need him, he's there and his staff is there. So I think that's really important. Well, I know we got off on your wife, but I know that she will hopefully appreciate our plug today on traveling, and hopefully it'll benefit you as well. What would you say the favorite types of people you enjoy serving? And I know that you would say, hey, we'll serve everyone, but what would you say your niche is?
A lot of our business comes from the real estate industry. That's kind of where I've gotten plugged in over time. And so referrals from real estate agents, loan officers, things like that. So I definitely have a special heart for the real estate industry. I'm very involved on the political side of real estate and things like that. But I think that to even go a little further, we love dealing with the young families buying their first home, or maybe even their second home, that are kind of, on their way up with things. Obviously price is still an issue. Not that price isn't an issue with well-established families, but especially for young families, maybe a family that has just had kids recently. That's where I am in my life, even though I'm a little bit older than many people going through that. I have 3 kids under the age of 5.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, it's a circus at our house.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy dealing with people. And even before I had kids, I enjoyed dealing with young families, because they are conscious about their money, but they're coming into their own in a way. And I just feel like our agency does a really good job of connecting with those people and, working with them through the process and being there. Many times we end up having people that are buying a home and they're coming off of their their parents' auto insurance for the first time, or they've never had home insurance. So there's just so many new things to them. And then when it comes to filing claims, I mean, it's weekly that we get someone that calls in that said, I've never filed a claim before. I don't know what to do. And so I just think that those clients, there is a sense of joy for helping them out. We're also a big proponent of life insurance. For young families, life insurance is not only is it important, but it's also very reasonable in price. So we're able to, help them along with that, and that's definitely something we're really proud of. We definitely strive to make sure we talk to everyone about life insurance.
That's great. So you did mention one of the products that you offer, life insurance, but tell us a little bit more about what you offer, and also if there's any other companies that you represent.
So the way farmers contract works is they get first right or refusal with anything that comes in. So we, the majority of our stuff does go through farmers. We do obviously auto and home. It's kind of the bread and butter. Pretty much all auto, home, and the majority of life is all written through farmers. Another big avenue that we do write quite a bit of is small commercial, a lot of your mom and pop type stuff. Some of that does go into farmers, and some of it doesn't fit their appetite. So we do have contracts with a handful of other companies to write specifically commercial lines of business. So majority of what we do is the auto, home, life, and then probably about 15% of our overall book is commercial as well. That's
great. So Brady, we always like to ask 5 key takeaways that you can give our customers or our listeners. What would you say 5 key takeaways are that people could benefit from after listening to this?
So you had given me a heads up on this, so I had kind of been thinking about it, and coming up with 5 is both tough and easy in that, you could easily come up with 100, and
very
then
true.
How do you narrow those down? But I do believe that probably there's really 2 things, and I'll break these 2 things down into 5 points. But the two main things that I think about when running the agency are staffing, and I think staffing is absolutely, without a doubt, number one. It's the hardest thing we do. It's the thing that can make your agency the most lucrative. It's also the thing that can destroy your agency quicker than anything. It can gain customers quickly. It can lose customers quickly. So I believe that staffing is so important. And I break that down into number one, finding the right people. It's so hard to find good people. But number 2 is when you do find the right people, is making sure they're compensated more than fair. I make sure that I do everything I can to make sure my staff is taken care of, and that I tell them that if they ever end up in a situation where they make less money one year than they did before, then that's just as much on me as it is on them. So I always want as our agency to grow, for them to grow. I don't ever want them to feel like the agency has grown and they were left behind. And then I think the third thing that goes along with staffing is motivating them. I'm not someone who's motivated by money. Some people are, but I do believe it's imperative to find out how your staff's motivated. Sometimes they'll tell you. Sometimes they think they're motivated one way, and that's not really what motivates them. So I do believe that when it comes to staffing, one of the biggest and most important things is figuring out how each individual person's motivated. And that basically comes back around to compensating them more than fair, because sometimes compensation to them is not just the money. It can be time off. It can be, travel's a big thing in our lives. So I have promotions going on once a year that they get an opportunity to travel and things like that. So like I said, finding the right people, making sure they're compensated fairly, and then motivating them. And then I think the other, 2 points that I'd make is really come down to marketing. One is trying as much marketing as you can. A great piece of advice I got a long time ago was marketing's like a stool, and the more legs you have, the better it'll do. A stool with one leg is
lots of channels.
Very, right. And so I believe that marketing is so imperative. And so it's number one, doing as much as you can. And then number 2, taking those things that work and narrowing them down and getting better at them. So again, when it comes down to me, my agency, it's really two major things that could easily be broken down into more than 5, but it's staffing and it's marketing. The rest things come together. If you have good staff and you have good marketing, the sales will show up. Your service, if you have good staff, your service will be good because they're doing the right things. So.
Yeah, definitely. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to know more about you, your agency, or to gain quotes? What's the best way?
So our number here at the office is really easy to remember. It's 972 insured. We got that number when I first got into business. Took a lot of searching.
Yes, I bet it did.
Our website is bradyzhillagency.com, and then my email is bhill@farmersagent.com.
Well, that's great. And we really thank you for being on today, Brady, and giving us some insight into who you are and your agency, and also your wife. I mean, big plug for your wife today.
Yeah.
She should take you out for dinner this week to thank you for.
I'll run that by her.
That's right. If I need to say something, I'll be more than happy to. But we want to make sure that everyone subscribes to the podcast and also gives a review on what you thought about Brady Hill and his conversation with us today. We also want to remind you, don't forget, if you're looking for insurance quotes that don't sting, make sure to go to BriteBee.com, click Get a Quote, and search Brady Hill, and you can find a profile with him and also additional information about him and his agency. Again, everyone, we thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.